Well, good evening. My name is Dwan, and I'm here along with Terry and Ryan, and we are here for Experience Mid-Valley Fellowship, your weekly kind of view into what happens in our support programs on Tuesday nights. And so we're going to talk just a little bit about the lessons that we're going to be facilitating tonight, because each of us have one. There's some others that will be happening too. But so Terry, tell us a little bit about the lesson that you're facilitating and what group that's for.
Okay, so the group is Hope Together. I'll have the girls from year 2. That's the group that their spouses are dealing with sexual addictions. Tonight's lesson, we're going to be discussing how do we remove our mask that we tend to wear based on lies and insecurities. How do we remove that mask to allow God to come in and bring healing and freedom to us?
Mm-hmm. Cool. And that's pretty important for that. I mean, for everybody, but for that group specifically.
Yeah, particularly for this group, because often when we're dealing with this, it traumatizes us, and we can go into codependency, or we put up a mask in order to deal with and manage our lives on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly remember my journey. Like that was one of the things I had to work through was. And I like to put forth this image that everything was fine to people, and even if it wasn't. And so there's significance to allowing people to see you, to actually interact with who you are, and all of that piece. So that's cool. That's good. And that's in year 2, because that's a 2-year program, right, for spouses. And so very good. Ryan, what lesson are you facilitating, and for what group?
So I'm going to be teaching in Mending the Soul, which is our group for abuse survivors. And the lesson is What is Abuse Part 2. Kind of the big part of this is that it's going into each of the types of abuse and having the members of the group process specific instances of abuse that happen to them in each type. And it's a very kind of powerful thing because when you've gone through abuse, there's a tendency to want to close up or hide it or minimalize it. And when you finally put words to this happened to me and it was abuse, there's power in that.
Yeah. Is this the one that has the wheel of abuse in it?
The wheel of abuse was last week.
Okay.
But last week went through kind of an overview of the types in the wheel of abuse. Then this week is diving in more specifically into each of the 6 categories of abuse.
Yeah. So there's kind of last week there was that wheel which has a bunch of definitions of different kinds of abuse.
Yeah.
Which really, because like you said very well, that we can tend to kind of minimize and kind of go, oh, it wasn't that big of a thing, or it wasn't abusive or whatever. So it really helps to put a name to it and to define it like it is. That's good.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be facilitating in Clean Heart Year 2, and Clean Heart is for men who are struggling with pornography and sexual addiction. This year we also have Clean Heart for women, so women who are struggling with pornography and sexual addiction and love addiction. But I'm going to be in Clean Heart Year 2 for men, and we're going to be talking about trauma. And so we're in week 3 talking about trauma and just the reality that trauma in our lives, which abuse would be an example of that. The trauma in our lives comes in all kinds of different forms, but it tends to drive addiction, that the pain of the trauma and wanting to medicate that pain, the emotional pain that we feel because of the trauma that we've experienced, that one of the ways we can do that is through addiction, through sexual addiction. And so I'm continuing to dig in and kind of go, okay, what are the places of trauma? What are the lies that we believed, and what's God's truth about that? And how do we sort of engage with life in a different way, not out of the place of trauma, but out of a place of healing? And so kind of deep waters that we're walking through in that group. And so a lot of painful and difficult emotions that coming up, and looking at situations that really in the past the goal has been to avoid them. And so now we're taking a look at them and feeling and walking through them. And so there's that, and then there's also Clean Heart Year 1. They'll have a different lesson and taking back ground for men and women who are struggling with unwanted same-sex desires. And so in all of these different topics and things, there's, as I mentioned, it's kind of deep waters, which we need God walking with us, need Jesus walking closely with us in that. And so we just invite your prayers, and we really value those. It makes a significant difference in the journey. And would also just encourage you to share this video or like the video, and share it with others who might be encouraged by contemplating the things that we're walking through. And so thank you for your partnership with us, and thanks for dropping in, and we'll see you again next week.